Welcome to my life as a traveling speech language pathologist. So, I just want to start off by answering some of the most common questions I get about traveling. And the first question I get often is, how did you get into travel speech therapy? When I was in grad school, they exposed us to a lot of different settings. So, with speech therapy, we have a very wide scope of practice. And there are a lot of settings we can work in. We can work in schools, we can work in hospitals, we can work in long-term care facilities, we can work in early intervention, there's private practice, there's even accent modification. So when they were exposing us to the different settings, one thing that came up was travel therapy. And you get to travel and pick up different contracts as a speech therapist. And I was very interested in that. So before I graduated, I started reaching out to different travel companies. And I was very set on going into the medical field. I did not want to go to schools. I was hell bent against going to the schools. So when I talked to these travel companies, a lot of them said it would be very hard for me to get into the medical setting as a traveler straight out of school, trying to complete my CF year. So your CF is your clinical fellowship, and it's a period of time after you graduate where you're not fully licensed. You have to work under a licensed speech language pathologist for 9 months to a year. It took me a little over a year to get my C's because I wasn't getting 40 hours a week at my facility. But once I got my C's, so C's are your certificate of clinical competency, and that's just giving you those full credentials. Now I was a fully licensed speech therapist. I didn't have to work under anybody. So once I got those C's, there were so many more jobs that opened up for me as a traveler in the medical field for my specific company. So let me not misspeak. It is not impossible for you to get a job in the medical field as a traveler right out of school while you're still working on your CF. The company that I chose to go with, they said they don't have clients that are looking to hire CFs for medical sites. But it's possible. It just wasn't possible for me. And I also personally would not recommend it. I've seen others that have done it, others that would recommend it. Me personally, I don't. But if you're up for the challenge, go for it. So, after I finished my C's, my recruiter, Zach, I had been talking to this guy since probably a month or so before I graduated grad school. And when he found out that I got a job in the medical setting and just was not going to start traveling yet, he was like, okay, well, whenever you're ready, we'll be here. So over the next year and a half, this man continuously, like every other month, would check in with me. How are things going? This, that, the other. As soon as I got my C's, he was like, so are you ready to travel? Are you ready to travel? So another question I get quite frequently is, do you get to choose where you go? The short answer is yeah, I get to choose where I go. Now, it's not like I can say, I think for my next contract, I want to go to Miami. Hey, Zach, make it happen. Does not work like that. So if Miami is my goal, the first thing I need to do is get a license for Florida. So as a speech therapist, I am licensed under our National Association of ASHA, the American Speech Hearing Association. But to practice in whatever state I'm going to have to get a license for that state. So currently I have a Georgia license, a Florida license, and a South Carolina license. So when I'm thinking about, okay, yeah, I want to go to Florida, the first thing you have to do, apply for a license so you will be able to practice there. Next, I go on my company's website and I look at the available jobs in Florida. So if there is no job available in Miami, I'm not going to Miami. But I might see like, oh, there's a job available in Fort Lauderdale. It's not as simple as me saying, hey, Zach, I see that job in Fort Lauderdale. I want it. It's mine. No. Just like any other job, you're going to have to go through the interview process. So I would tell my recruiter, hey, I like this position. Let's go ahead and put in an application. He's going to handle all of that. He's going to give them my references. He's going to give them my application. He's going to set up a time for my interview. And then he'll tell me, all right, you have an interview Monday at 12. All right, so if the interview goes well, they'll extend an offer. I'll review the contract, and in the contract's going to be the duration, so how long, the pay, what you'll be reimbursed, because you do get reimbursed for your licenses. That's awesome. You'll get reimbursed for some travel expenses, and all of that good stuff. And then you sign your contract and they give you your start date. So another thing, the duration, how long are you on contracts? And it changes from site to site. So with medical settings, a typical, I would say, duration is 13 weeks. That's pretty average. That's pretty standard. Across the board, not just for travel speech therapists, but travel physical therapists, travel nursing, 13 weeks is a pretty standard contract. Now, what can happen is if they like you and they have not found a permanent speech therapist, they can offer you an extension. And that actually happened at my first contract in Myrtle Beach. So I would say about halfway, maybe a little over halfway through, they'll be like, hey, we haven't found anybody and we just want to know if you'd be interested in extending your contract. And then at that point in time, that you might be able to negotiate your pay. If you want to increase a little bit, think you can get some more money. Well, you don't negotiate that. Your agent would negotiate that for you. And then they'd say, okay, we can re-up for another 6 weeks. We can re-up for another 13 weeks, whatever you feel comfortable with. There'll be those negotiations and you could sign on for a longer contract. Now, school settings are going to be a little different. Schools usually want you to stay there for the whole school year. So that's about 42, 44 weeks, something like that. But once again, this changes depending on the need of the facility. So let's say there's a speech therapist that's pregnant and needs to go on maternity leave. So they might not want you for 42 weeks. They might want you for 10 to 12 weeks while she has her baby, takes time off, gets back on her feet, and then comes back to work. So it does depend. But one thing that I really like is you have the right to terminate your contract whenever you want to. Let me take that back. It's not necessarily whenever you want to. You do have to give them a proper notice, and all of that will be spelled out in your initial contract that you sign. For healthcare, I want to say it's 2 weeks. You have to give them a 2-week notice before you leave. And for the school system, the one that I've been in thus far, you have to give at least a 30-day notice before you decide to terminate your contract. So yeah, those are some of the main questions I get about travel therapy. I'm very excited to start this YouTubing journey, especially as I am ending this contract in a school and starting a new contract this summer. I cannot wait to bring you guys on this journey with me and talk about all things like moving, securing housing, how I go about finding housing for short-term assignments, I mean, what it's the pros, the cons, the good, the bad, the ugly, what it's like doing taxes for travel therapy, etc., etc. There is so much to talk about, but also exposing you guys to the field of speech language pathology. It is a great field. I love my job. I wake up every day and I'm happy to go to work. Not always happy about waking up at 5:45 because I'm working at a high school, so you know high school, they go to school early. This bell rang at 7 o'clock. Not my favorite part, but my job is so fulfilling, so gratifying. I truly love what I do. So, thank you guys for joining me on this journey. Please, any questions that you have about speech language pathology, any questions about traveling, any topics you want me to discuss, please comment them or send me a message on Instagram. Just reach out, let me know, and I'll be happy to cover these topics in the upcoming future. So glad you guys have decided to go on this journey with me.